What's going on, everyone? Welcome to part 6, our final part for our Revit introduction tutorials. And in today's tutorial, we're going to be going over creating topography and a site for our house. And we're also going to be going over setting up a rendering, both interior and exterior renderings, and lastly setting up our drawings on a sheet and playing around with visibility graphics just a little bit. So if you haven't seen parts 1 through 5 yet, I recommend you go to part 1 and watch it from there, because the way we're organizing these tutorials is in the form of a project to really help you understand some of the fundamentals of Revit that you will be using in an office. Otherwise, if you're just interested in learning a little bit more about creating a sheet or working on renderings or even just creating a site for your building, you're more than welcome to just follow along with this tutorial. So we're going to flip over to my screen right now. So open your file from the previous tutorial that we've done for this project, and what we're going to start off with is working with the site. So if you go to the massing and site tab, you're going to use the topo surface tool. And to do this, we're going to click on the site. Under floor plans, we're going to click on site, and first things first, we want to clean it up just a little bit. So normally what we do is hit VG for visibility graphics and go on annotation categories. As we learned in a previous tutorial, grid lines are for annotation, and we go on grids and we put halftone to lessen the intensity of the line weights. But for the sake of what we're working with here, we want to clear this up so it's going to be easier for us to just focus on the topo. So let's highlight all this, hold control, and we're going to click hide, right click and go on hide in view and select elements. So whenever you hide something, if you want to reveal it back, just go to this light bulb in the bottom and click reveal hidden elements. And you can just select anything that you want to bring back, hold control, and toggle to reveal hidden elements. So we're going to toggle this off because we're not going to bring this back. And also we want to hide our elevation markers as well, though later on we're going to bring this back. So right click, hide in view, elements. So now that we've cleared that up, there's one more thing we want to do. We want to show the crop box. So this is the crop box for our project, and what we want to do is click do not crop view so the crop box does not affect everything that we're going to be drawing right now. So let's click on the topo surface command, and right now what we want to do is begin with 0 feet 0 inches. And the reason for this is because the way we designed our building is to sit on a flat graded slope. So we didn't design our building to sit on a slanted slope, so we're going to avoid slanting any of the area in the proximity of our building. So what we're going to do is just leave the elevation at 0 feet 0 inches, and we're going to begin to specify points. And let's make it maybe a little tighter, some of these points here. Let's actually have it like that. And then what we're going to do is a little bit farther around our building, we can begin to decrease the slope. So let's do something a bit gradual, like -2 feet. And let's click here. And then once again, let's do something really drastic. So let's try something like -4 feet. So let's go something like this. And once you finish drawing your topography, just hit the check mark to finish it. So if you want to see more contour lines along your surface that you've created, go on this drop down arrow still under the massing and site tab, click here, and under here you can see the intervals of contour lines that are being displayed. We have the lines being displayed every 10 feet of elevation change. So we could change it to something like, let's say, every 1 feet. And now we can see much more contour lines appear on our topo. And if we go to the 3D view, this is how it begins to look. And you can see that little descent in the topography. So let's go back to the site plan. The next thing we want to do is actually create the build path. So this is basically what your building is sitting on. So by selecting this, we want to outline just the shape of our building. So it's a little bit hard to see because part of the roof is sticking out and we can't see directly underneath. So what we're going to click is we're going to edit the graphic display and go on the wireframe so we can see this. And now let's actually, instead of picking the walls, let's actually just draw this out. So we're going to go here from this edge to that edge and draw it accordingly to the path that you have, or if you have the same path, just follow along. And once you have that drawn, just hit the check mark to specify it. And now we specified the building pad for our building to sit on. Now the next thing we want to define is the walk-in path and garages and things like that. So what we'll do is go on annotate and let's click on detail lines and we can start to draw some paths. So the first path that I noticed we have is the main path leading to the entrance. So I'm going to begin to specify that. Maybe we have something like this. We could close that up right there. And then maybe this could be like a small space for shrubs. But then we can also define a walk-in space around that. But first let's define this space. So let's say here we have greenery. Let's make it like, I guess 5 feet, maybe 7 feet. And then we go around here and let's close it. Just like that. And then let's actually reduce this path. We don't want the path to be too wide going around. We want a path that's going to lead to the patio back here. So let's draw something else as well. Let's make it, let's click detail line once again. And let's draw, let's say, we can make the path about 4 feet wide. So we'll make the path about 4 feet wide. Let's click the detail line. Detail line. We're going to make this 4 feet wide. Or even 5 feet looks pretty good. Let's change this to 4 feet wide. Let's make this 4 feet. And this we can begin to reduce. This could technically also be a driveway for us. So we could have this as a driveway and a front entrance. So this is the path that's going to take us around. But for now, let's continue with the path that's going to take us around to the patio. Let's go back to annotate, detail line. I'm just going to use the rectangle tool. Let's draw something going back here. And here we want to change it. Let's make it, keep it consistent. So we'll make that 4 feet as well. And this is ultimately going to connect to the sidewalk. So let's also design a sidewalk for this. And now we just need to outline our backyard slash patio. Let's make the extents something like this. Let's follow that. And now we can also begin to imagine that over here could be a line of greenery as well. So let's just let's go back on detail line. Let's take the rectangle tool And let's just outline that and have that line up just like that. And this will be, let's pretend this is the sidewalk going off, and let's say this is the street. So let's measure this quickly. So how much space do we have between our front yard and the sidewalk? About 14 feet. 14 feet is a pretty good length. What we'll do is we'll start to draw the sidewalk from here. First, let's define the boundaries of the sidewalk, the outer boundaries. So we're going to go back on annotate, detail line, and let's say that that's the outer boundary, and let's copy that in. Typical sidewalk dimensions tend to be around 6 feet wide, but we'll just really make this wide, pretend like it's just like a huge mega sidewalk type of stuff. So let's make this really wide. So we're going to offset this line, let's say 10 feet. So let's offset it 10 feet. So this is part of our sidewalk now. We accidentally offsetted it this way. Let's just delete that. So that's our 10 feet sidewalk. What we want to also do is actually enclose this. So this is going to, we're going to have more greenery here acting as a barrier for the front part of our house. So let's detail line, and let's define that boundary as well, just like that. So let's close this up. Boom. And then we have this. And then we're going to do the same thing on this side. So let's pretend our sidewalk is continuing. Just like that, and we close it up. And then here we could just have just a little bit of greenery. We can actually have the greenery extend so it doesn't get in the way. And now this is each of our boundaries. We have the patio, we have the circulation path, we have the driveway / entrance into the front of the house, and we have areas for greenery here in the front as a barrier, and here as well. This is our sidewalk, and beyond that we want to have a street. So let's one more time go on detail line. Let's just take the rectangle tool and let's draw something just like this. Let's just make it go something like 35 feet is a good width for a street, and we're just going to have it go just like that. So once we've drawn each of our boundaries, now what we're going to do is cut into this topo surface using these boundaries. So now if we go back to massing in site, what we're going to do is click split surface to create two distinct surfaces. And first you have to select the surface you want to split, which will be this. And then we're going to go on pick lines because we already drew out the lines we want to use for the boundary. So let's select these lines and let's draw one line here. And that's our first one. Let's hit check. And now this is a separate surface. So now what we want to do is hit split surface again until we create each of these. So let's do split surface. Fine, let's save. And if we take a look at that in 3D actually, you can see that that is its own surface. So now let's go back and let's continue to split the surfaces. So let's go back to our site plan. And we're going to do split surface again. Select this. And now let's pick our other grass boundary as well. And we're going to draw in lines here. And let's hit check to split it. Now we have our other surface, and we're just going to repeat this process for each of them. So I'm going to fast forward just a little bit. So once you finish splitting the surfaces into your desired path, such as a driveway, sidewalk, and even the street line, we can move on to the next step, which is going to be adding materials to each of these surfaces. So we're going to go to our 3D view, just because it's going to be a lot easier to see from here. And actually, even before we start adding the materials, one thing we want to do is add thickness to our pavements. So we want to add thickness to both the street, the sidewalk, and we want to elevate it to a certain extent. So how do we begin to do this? So it's a little tricky. We can't just do an extrude surface command like what you do in a program such as Rhino, but there is a way to trick the program into thinking this is a surface that can be extruded. So for the next few steps, a huge shout out to the channel Balkan Architect. He specializes in doing Revit tutorials. So when I first learned this, I found this to be a really fascinating and interesting trick. So we're going to do the following in order to give our curb thickness. So first things first, we're going to start off by working with the sidewalks. Let's select, hold control, select any pavement that's going to be the sidewalk pavement. We can even begin to do it for these surfaces, but I want this surface to have somewhat of a different thickness or different materiality from the pavement over here. So we're going to do it one by one. Let's start off with the sidewalk, and then we're going to work our way into these two pavement and the patio over here. So the first thing we want to do is actually isolate this element. So what we're going to do is click the glasses down here and click isolate element. And now we're going to export this. But don't worry, this is a really fast and easy process. So we're going to go on File, and then we're going to go down to Export, and we're going to export this as CAD file DWG. And yes, we're going to have the temporary hide elements. Let's hit Next. We want to save this just like this. Let's say 3D view, sidewalk 1, hit OK. And we're going to leave temporary hide/isolate mode on. Give it a moment. So once that finishes, the next thing we want to do is in place mask. So while still on the masking tab, click in place mask, and it's going to say this. That's fine. And then we're going to just call this mask 1, or we could call it pavement 1. Let's say OK. And now what we have to do is go on the Insert tab, and we're going to import the CAD block that we just did. So we're going to import this. And now this is imported. And once it's imported, we just hit the check, finish mask. Now this is a mask that we can select, and we could do a little bit of edits to it. So we're going to go back to the masking and site tab, and we're going to click roof. So now we're going to turn this into quote unquote a roof in order for this to act as a surface that can have thickness. So what we're going to do is go on edit type. We're going to duplicate this, and we're going to call it pavement, and we're going to put roof in parentheses. So, because it's not really a roof, but yeah, you get it. So now what we want to do is go on edit, and we want to change the thickness. Typically a sidewalk curve could be about 6 inches. I'm just going to go with 5 inches for the thickness, and we're going to hit OK. And now we have to select what we want to become the surface, which is here. And one more thing we will actually want to do, we actually want to change the material as well. So actually, let's go back to edit type. Let's go back here, and let's click on the structure, and let's pick some sort of pavement. Well, let's see, let's type pavement to see if we find anything that matches. There's asphalt. We don't want asphalt. Let's use maybe some sort of cement. Let's see, cement tiles. Let's take a look at how that looks. It's taking a while to load in my screen. It's a little bit heavy. Cement tile is not so bad. Ceramic tile, I mean. I would say the best one might be this light concrete. Let's import it into the project. Yes, use render appearance, hit OK, hit OK. Now we have the material. And after that, we just had to hit create roof. So once we finish, we could click on the object. Let's level offset maybe 5 inches. And now when we turn off the hide isolate, now we have our pavement and the appropriate thickness for our pavement. And likewise, we just have to continue the same process for each of these. The only thing I might not add thickness to is the grass because we don't want it to be blocky, but we'll do the same for each of these. The asphalt, we're just going to leave it leveled with the ground just so that there's a distinction between the elevated pavement and the grass and all those things. Right now, what we're going to do, we're going to repeat the same process for these pavements. So I'm going to skip ahead. So now we also have concrete back patio. So the next thing I want to do is now to begin adding materials to everything else on the site. So we're going to click on the topo surface and material. Instead of doing it by category, we're going to click here. See grass. Here we go. Grass produced results. Let's put plant and let's put grass. So here I'm going to use 2 different types of greenery to begin to distinguish everything around. So for plant, I'm going to use for the general topo. So let's make everything here green, just like that. And then here, I'm going to use the other type of greenery. Let's put grass. And if you want, you can always import your own grass material. That's totally fine if you don't really like the colors or the textures. Or you can duplicate the material and always edit it to your liking. I'm just going to use it the way it is because for the sake of demonstrating how to create the topo, it's going to work pretty fine. Okay. And likewise, we're going to do it here and here. We're just going to pick the grass. Actually, yeah, render. Let's use render appearance. Now with that, the only thing left to do is the asphalt. 3rd time's the charm. Or technically it's the 4th time. Okay. Gray. Let's take this. First, actually, let's hit OK and apply the material. We'll go back and change it in just a second. So now after that, let's save it so we don't have to, create the material again. Save, save, save. Okay, perfect. Click. Pave gray. Appearance. Tint. Yes, it works. So maybe just applying the material first and then changing it after. Or 4th time is just really the charm. Sweet. Maybe a little reflectivity. Yeah, or not so much. Self-illumination, I think that's good. Hit OK. Oh, or actually, let's turn off the self-illumination. Yeah, let's turn that off. Much better. And this is going to be the same material. Hit OK. Awesome. So now we have everything here set up. I'm just going to save for insurance sake one more time. This thing crashed on me several times. Okay, here we go. Now, the next thing you want to do is add Entourage. And similarly to the way we've been adding all of our furniture and everything else, we're going to use Revit families. And you're more than welcome to download some Revit families like for special shrubs and all these things to add to your site. But there's a lot of pretty good and decent default files available within the Autodesk family folder. So what we're going to do is let's go on Insert and Load Family. The way you really find a lot of these things is by scrolling down, go on Planting, and you can find some additional options in the Autodesk library folder. And then you can also add Entourage, meaning people, and Entourage, like also for like trucks, all that stuff. And it comes out to look, pretty good. Let's go here and let's actually go on Component, Place Component. And now we're going to start looking at some of our entourages. So I have many types of trees. So if you're interested in adding trees, maybe that's something you can do. Just a quick disclaimer, just the way the trees is going to look in this view, even though it's realistic, it won't actually look the way it's going to look when you do the final rendering. So don't pay attention to the appearance too much. But I do also advise changing the graphic display mode because it's going to get pretty heavy. So I recommend something like shaded, honestly, and you going to place the entourage while the shaded display is on. So let's go back to place components. We're going to start adding some deciduous tree. Let's see. So I'm just gonna organize this however which way, create just an interesting landscape, you know. Yeah, let's change it up. We don't want too many of the same trees. Let's get something just a bit taller. Ooh, poplar, very nice. Maybe some here. Want some shading by the house, maybe one really close here. Let's go, oops. Let's see, what else do we have? All of these are trees, right? Okay, all of these are trees. Do we have shrubs imported? Let's see, we might have to load some shrubs. Let's scroll through this. Do we have shrubs? Shrubs. So we do not currently have shrubs in the project, but that is no problem. We can just begin to import some of that. But let's finish the basic entourage using the trees and things such as that. So let's add some of the smaller ones, which will be maybe here and there. Let's add the smaller ones. Yeah, I kind of like this open grassy space right here, so we're probably just gonna leave that like that. Let's just keep placing. So we're going to go on insert. We want to load family. So let's go on planting. We can take these two plants and let's bring it in. And let's go on component, place component. And yeah, let's start to have some of these plants. Let's start to put some maybe here, front of the house. And you can always remember, you can always edit it. So there's many types. So once you import these things, you have many different types of shrubs you can put in. Let's actually change some of these. Let's make it a little bit taller. Like the 4.5 feet can begin to act as a barrier between the sidewalk and this pavement that I have here. We do want to alternate it, not have everything looking the same. Although nothing is wrong with having it look the same in this case. And make it like a shrub. Pick whatever you feel works better for your design, or if you have a similar design. Ooh, I really like this. Let's actually go and let's delete some of these. Let's get something like this in here. Hold control, let's drag it forward. And in case you're curious how it looks from the site plan, this is how it's starting to look over here. So you can also do it from your site plan view. If you want to organize everything based on how it's going to look in the plan, this is just a good way to do it. Let's actually continue organizing it. Maybe fixing a few of them. And let's say we want to have 10. So just like that, arraying it is just way faster. Some smaller ones. Yeah, so that looks a little bit more compelling. But I think this is good enough. Actually, a few more things I want us to add. I want to add seating for the patio outside. And I also want to add some light posts in this driveway. So I already have some seating within the project, but if you do want to add seating, feel free to go on the insert tab, load family, and what you would do is go to furniture and you'll go to tables, and you can choose any one of these tables that you feel is appropriate. Maybe a round outdoor table. What I'm thinking of using is a custom picnic bench that I've downloaded, and I'll also make that available in the description if you want to use that. So once again, I already have that loaded into the project. I'm just going to go to it. Let's find it. It's right here. And for some reason I can't see it. Let's see, why would that be that I can't see it? That's fascinating. Yeah, it's hard to see. We don't need several of these. First of all, let's hit spacebar. Maybe 2 of them is good enough. Yeah, I think 2 of them is good enough actually for what we're trying to do. Actually, quickly, I want to change this to a double glass door. A sliding door would be preferable, and I actually do have a sliding door that I made a Revit family, but I'm not going to insert that. It's not too important, to be honest. So let's bring that here. A double glass door, that looks a lot better, especially when you're going into a backyard. This could just be single because we have a fixed window here. Also, feel free to take a look and actually go around and arrange your windows, fix it up. For me, I'm not going to do this, though normally I would not just stick with some of the defaults. Even adding some custom windows can also look really nice. But let's do a little bit more here. What I actually want to also add here. So what I'm going to do is load family, and let's go to doors, residential, and I want to add that thin glass. Yes, perfect, right here. I want to add these 2. Let's hit open, and yes, we're going to bring all of these into the project. Yes, and yes, I want to add this. So let's actually go to the full one. It looks a lot more interesting. And then we could put this on either side. But this is taller. This is 96 inches. We can always modify the door to fit the height of this, because this is the front entrance. We can make it a little bit more grand. So we could go on edit type. Let's duplicate, and let's make the height 96 inches. And we're going to specify that here. Let's put in 96 inches. So that's 8 feet. Perfect. And now our door matches the height over here. So if you want, you can also just import a door handle for that, but we're not going to worry about that for what we're working on. We want to add the lamp post along the driveway. So we can go and do that as well. Actually, one more quick thing I want to add. I actually also want to add another window. Let's go on architecture, window, and let's actually adjust the sill height. Let's make the sill height perfect, so it lines up with what's adjacent. Begin to import our lamppost family. So let's go back to the site plan. And for the site plan, we can actually switch back to hidden line. I'm actually going to also add the lamppost into the description so you all can download and add to your projects. Otherwise, you can navigate in the Revit family folder and you can also find it there. Although I'm not quite familiar exactly where to get the specific lamppost that we need, which is 120 volts. So otherwise, just download it. And let's go down and let's look for it. Here we go. And now we're just going to start placing it accordingly. And we want to go 9 feet. And we're just going to do the same thing. We can just go on array. Click here to here. And then what we're going to click is, you could just even put like 18 and we could just delete it, the extra ones. So looking here, we may notice that this is a part of this landscape because it's sitting on the topo, but we have this surface that's raised by 5 inches. So the way we're going to do this, since our lampposts are grouped, maybe yours might not be grouped and you can edit it individually, but just in case your lamppost is grouped, you can either edit the group and subtract some from the group, or you can just go and ungroup them all. Let's go on edit group. Let's determine what we want to actually remove from the group. You can just click on this and offset it by 5 inches. And we can just do the same, repeat it for each of these. And that's just about it for the exterior entourage. The next few things we have to do is consider lighting. The inside is going to be, especially when we're working with interior renderings or renderings that is going to be done at night, what's very important to have is good lighting. And in order to work on the lighting, what we would have to do is add light sources to each of our ceilings. And the way you do that is go into your project browser, and underneath floor plans, you should see ceiling plans. And each of these are reflected ceiling plans. The reason I didn't get too much into this in this tutorial is that for the most part, in especially design firms, working with a ceiling plan does require working with a lighting specialist and understanding the placement of lightings and all these different things. I want to do a separate tutorial outside of these tutorials that really dive into understanding this. But for now, since we have to set up lighting for our renderings, we're going to do a very basic and quick ceiling plan, and it's not too accurate, but I just want to show you how you would go about placing certain lighting fixtures. So what we will do is let's start with the ground floor, which we have selected. We would go on insert, load family, we'll go down to lighting, and then instead of MEP, we're going to do architectural lighting. So we're working with internal lighting. So let's go here. And there are many different types of lighting fixtures, as I mentioned. So there are different types of lamps, things like that. And what we'll do, we'll import a combination of things that we can use to illuminate our plan. So for the most part, we do want something like a floor lamp. That would be very helpful in, for example, the bedrooms. So we can start off with these two. Let's hit open. And now let's go back to load family. Let's go down to lighting, architectural, internal, and we're going to start to import a few more. We don't have to really get so nuanced and add things such as table lamps, but you're more than welcome to add that. For example, if you want to render a bedroom or a living room, having a table lamp may look really nice and it's an additional light source. So you're more than welcome to add one of these. Some ceiling lights, I'm going to import that. Let's also load there's cabinet lights. We can use that for the kitchen. Let's also bring in a downlight strip light will be pretty good. And the last thing we want to import is just a few lighting for our exterior. You know, for example, like the sensor lighting. Let's go on architectural, external. So you can even have your street posts. Let's actually, yeah, the street post seems pretty interesting. So we're going to add the wall light. Let's have, let's actually bring in all of these. So in order to actually draw a ceiling, we have to go on the architecture tab and we're going to click ceiling. And what we can do is work between sketching and automatic sketching. We're just going to actually sketch out the boundaries. So let's go on pick lines and let's select the boundaries of our ceiling. And this is our boundary, so let's hit check. Actually, before we hit check, you want to determine the type of ceiling you want. The 2x4s is typically ceilings that you would see in office spaces. We don't want that, we just want a generic ceiling. And now you determine what the height of the ceiling will be relative to the headroom height. Say 8 feet 10 inches, maybe that should be good. And now we have this. Now this is our entire ceiling. Now we can even check it out in the section. Here we go. This is our ceiling. Perfect. Yep. and we can always change the height at any time. So let's go back to the ceiling plan. And now that we're here, what we're going to do is begin to add some components. Let's add some lighting components. This seems pretty good. And you can just begin to populate the plan. So this is my kitchen. We do want to have some ceiling lights here. And now, once again, this tutorial is not too focused on having the right type of lighting or calculating the total luminance of the space. That's something more for a future tutorial. I'll try to begin to get into that to the best of my knowledge. But for now, we're just trying to populate the ceiling plan with as many lighting fixtures as we can use in order to help illuminate the renderings. So here's a section view of how that looks. And we're going to just repeat those steps on each level, populate it to the best of your abilities, and feel free to add floor lamps, table lamps, whatever you prefer. So I'm going to jump ahead to after I finish specifying all the lighting fixtures. And remember, one more time, for any ceiling hosted light fixture, you're going to have to create the boundaries for the ceiling. You can either draw it or use pick lines if you already have a boundary drawn out. And now, once you finish adding all the lighting to each of your scheme, we're going to test out different lighting units to see which one works best, which is why I have different types of lighting. What we're going to do is, let's head over to our floor plan. Always make sure you save everything so it doesn't crash, because when you start working with renderings, it's more than likely to crash. So let's save this. Now from here, what we want to do is actually set up some of our views for the renderings. So how do we go about setting up render views? So next we have to create our perspective views. And the way we're going to do this is, you see the 3D view button at the top. If you click the drop down over here, you have camera. Just another way to access that is going on view, 3D view, but same thing. You have to just go click on camera. So let's do this. You pick your starting position and then you just click and drag. So let's say I want my starting position to be, let's say, somewhat at an angle here, not directly down the middle, and we drag it out and then we click. And now our view is created. And if we go to 3D views, we have 3D view number 1, and we can just begin to rename it to whatever we would like to rename it and create as many camera views as we like. So once we have our view box, we can begin to edit and tweak the views, and there's several ways we can go and do that. If we go back to our ground floor plan where we drew the camera, you may notice that the camera is gone, but no worries. If we highlight this box, go back to the ground floor plan, it's going to reappear. And we can always drag shift the target to tweak it that way. And you can even take this box, change the scope of range, meaning how far can I see. So if I only put it up to here, I can't see beyond this point. And let me demonstrate. You see, now it's cropped over here. So let's go back to the ground floor plan and let's just extend. And then we're gonna click here to drag it out. And I might actually even add, take some trees, because here is like very, very empty. So maybe we take another one of these trees, hold control it, bring it over here. So you do have a little bit something in the flanking the background. And if we go back to our 3D view, you can just begin to adjust it just like that. But that's just one way to begin to shift it. Another way to shift it, and actually probably my favorite way of doing it, is actually using the wheel. So what we want is the full navigational wheel. Let's click on the wheel. And then here we're going to click the drop down over here. And if you don't have the navigational wheel, all you have to do, let me actually close this to demonstrate. All you have to do is go on the view tab, user interface, and then you just bring out the navigation bar right there. So clicking on the navigation wheel what we can do is click this drop down arrow over here, and you have a little bit of control over adjusting, let's say, the speed and all these things, and you can increase or decrease the focal length, meaning you can make it wider, more telephoto. For this view, we're going to keep the focal length the same, so we're not going to change it. But so for now, we're just going to click on these operations. So you can click and you can zoom and you can pivot it that way, or if you let go, you can click and orbit the camera that way, and you could do the same thing, tilt it upwards, tilt it downwards, however you prefer, and you can just control it like this, which makes you feel more involved in the movement in the three-dimensional space. So this is a really nice way to do it. For me personally, I'm actually satisfied with this setup. Let's actually just orbit just ever so slightly, and then let's just change the look, and let's walk just a bit. We don't want to do this too much. Let's walk just a bit, a little forward. Actually, yeah, perfect. So we're going to leave this view like this, and let's rename this view. We could call it driveway entrance. Not a very attractive name, but you get the point. So we're going to leave that with that name. And now let's make a few more views. Let's bring out the camera tool one more time, and let's have a view. We want to create a view looking at the kitchen, looking this way. And let's change the scope box. Let's click here, and let's increase this just a bit so we can, let's drag that back. Let's increase this so we can see beyond, even a little bit outside. And if we go back to the view, this is what we're seeing. We can just begin to even rename that. Let's call it kitchen. Maybe a camera looking into the living room. That would be pretty interesting. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to fast forward. I'm going to set up all my views, and then we're going to move into the next step, which is going to be for rendering. First thing we want to do is go to the tea kettle dialog below. This is the render dialog box. And just as a disclaimer, we're not using V-Ray or any external plugins. We're only going to use Revit's render engine, so you can see how pretty good Revit can be at rendering with the right settings and everything. So we don't want a really super high quality, because the higher the quality, of course, the longer it's going to take to render. Let's do something like medium quality, and we want to use the external sun, but we also want to use artificial light. And just something you should do, or something you should know in that regards, let's click artificial lights. You can actually select what lights you want to have turned on, what lights you want to have active in the project. We have 148 different lights, so this is a ton of lights. So this could really slow down the rendering. So if you don't want to really deal with that, just choose the lights that's going to be active in your rendering and turn off everything else. And going here, we can pick the lighting, like the time of day, all that stuff. So you can pick like a certain location. If you need the specific lighting qualities of a certain location, you can do single day at a single time. You can choose what time and all that stuff. What I'm thinking of doing is actually just having the sun up at a specific angle. And actually what I'm going to do, probably am going to do a specific time of day, because that's probably going to be a little bit more relevant. So let's do something like the morning hours, 11 a.m. Actually, we can even have an evening sun. Let's do that. 6:22. Yeah, let's do that. Hit render. Our rendering just finished and we have an evening setting rendering. And now what we're going to do is just go on adjust exposure, not darker. A 9 should be good. Highlights, let's make the highlights a little bit brighter. Yeah, we can lighten the shadows. We're not going to saturate it. Hit OK. And we start to have something that looks a little bit like this, which isn't too bad. As we said before, the lighting in the ceiling would not quite look like this, and we would just arrange it in a more professional way, first of all. But that's just the basic gist. So what you can do, you can export after you finish your rendering. You can export it outside the project and save it to the project. I recommend hitting export and exporting it outside the project, and then also saving it to the project. Make sure you save it to the project so that later on when we do sheets, you'll be able to add it to your sheets. And let's call it kitchen 1. And a new tab right here is going to be created saying renderings, and this is your saved renderings. So let's hit X to close it. And now let's try something a little bit different. So let's do one more example of, let's say, a nighttime rendering. So we're going to go on the render dialog, and we're just going to put that to medium. We want both the artificial light and the sunlight. And let's see, we're not going to adjust exposure beforehand, but we're going to leave all the lights on. Let's go here. Yeah, let's have it the same thing. Let's make this August even. Maybe 6:20 something, maybe, well, yeah, 6:20 something p.m. should be good. So let's just, yeah, let's actually just do it like this, even, and let's hit OK, and we're going to hit render. Here is the finished piece. We just bumped up the exposure a bit because it was pretty dark, and we could brighten the highlights, and shadows we could lighten just a bit. Hit OK, and this is what we have. I actually also stopped the rendering a little bit early, so it's just a bit blurry. Feel free at any point to just redo, when you're doing these renderings, to just do it at a higher quality. I'm just going to fly through this just to demonstrate how you can do some of these renderings. You can follow the same procedure. You can export the file, you can save it like that, and then you can also save it to your project as well. And we could call it entrance. Let's call it night. I'm going to go over one more example showing you how to utilize daylight in an interior rendering. So we're going to go to one of our interior views. Render. Bedroom. All right. So let's do one more example with this view over here. So we're going to click the render dialog box. Medium is fine. Yes, exterior artificial. So azimuth, we're going to leave it to 0. Altitude, maybe we bump it up. We could bring it to like 40 degrees, and everything's relative to the view. Let's hit OK, and let's try rendering this. So now it's finished, and we're going to just do some quick exposure adjustments. So let's bring this to maybe 12. Let's make the highlights just a little bit brighter, shadows a bit lighter, and let's see how this looks. And this isn't too bad. Honestly, not really any of the best renderings that I've done personally, but as long as you understand the principles of how to set up a render, how to set up your view, and how to begin to set up entourages, that's all that really matters at the end of this day, and that's what I hope you took away from this tutorial. So with that, that's going to wrap up our tutorial for today. So this part ended up being a lot longer than I anticipated. Therefore, we're going to have to split part 6 into 2 parts. Therefore, we're going to have a 7th part for this series. And in the 7th part, we're going to be going over how to take everything that you've made and how to take it to a sheet, how to set up the title block for a sheet, and all those things. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, anything you have issues with, please let me know in the comments below. I'll do my best to reply to each and every single one of you as soon as I can. So remember to save this project because we're going to go off from this into the final steps. So I hope you enjoyed this. See you all in the next one.